Hi, thank you for joining me. So today I'm going to talk about anime that I've watched recently. I'm thinking I might need to do these a little more frequently for it to really be stuff that I've watched recently. Because as you guys know, I'm stepping up my anime watching a bit. I really want to cut my backlog down. So I don't know. Maybe I'll make these a little more frequently. But to start off with, I'll go in chronological order. So this is the least recent thing that I want to talk about first. I watched Tenchi in Tokyo. This is a television series from the mid to late 90s. It's a full season. I don't remember exactly, but probably 24, 26 episodes right around in there. And it's really good. If you're a Tenchi Muyo fan, which I am, I'm surprised that I hadn't seen this before. I definitely, at the time, had seen the OAV series. I'd seen, at least some of Tenchi Universe. I don't think that I ever finished that, actually. But I ended up seeing Galaxy Police, Tenchi Muyo GXP, which I really liked. So just the fact that I didn't go back and watch Tenchi in Tokyo seems a little weird. So anyway, I'm catching up on that, and it was great. Just as far as Tenchi Muyo series go, it ranks right up there. I would say, maybe just under the OAVs themselves, the originals. It's essentially another retelling. So if you're familiar with it, I mean, it's basically the series that started the anime harem series. So Tenchi's just this kind of normal every man. He is trained by his grandfather in martial arts, and technically his lineage is from outer space, although I don't know if they really play that up in this series, or if that is even really the case in this series. And similar kind of things, like his mom has passed away. He's living with his dad and his grandfather. These are all like commonalities between everything, and the main cast of characters is the same. But some of the ways that they come together and stay together is different. You actually get to see, kind of in flashback, how Tenchi has these crystals that he got from his mom, and he can use them to, unbeknownst to him, until this threat from outer space arrives. He's able to use them to actually subdue Ryoko, which is kind of, I think that harkens back to the way the OAVs start, when he first unseals Ryoko, and then pretty much does the same thing. So it's all pretty familiar territory for Tenchi Muyo fans, and from there it's just an excuse to do more comedy, more great Tenchi Muyo hijinks. But this time Tenchi, he goes to Tokyo to study at a shrine under a priest there who has agreed to basically to train him for a little while. So he goes to Tokyo, he goes to school there, and it's this chance to examine the relationships between the main characters. Things get a little bit more serious, where what happens when Tenchi's not around. Everybody can't just see him all the time. Sort of what is everyone's relationships to each other and to Tenchi, and I think it puts a highlight too on a little bit of what does Tenchi want. He gets a chance to make new friends in Tokyo and sort of start this new different life. So it's interesting in that respect, and otherwise I would say it's pretty typical of a Tenchi series where there's some kind of big villain, and things start to get pretty hardcore towards the end, and there's some fighting involved and things like that. But as far as I was concerned, this was just really great, and I enjoyed it a lot. So definitely, especially if you're a Tenchi Muyo fan, I recommend you check it out. If you're not, it wouldn't even be that bad a place to start with Tenchi Muyo. I would say, certainly I'd recommend you start with the original OAVs, but if you didn't, it's a great series, so it would be a great starting point for you. The next thing that I watched was another Tenchi series. I hadn't noticed that a new one had come out, War on Geminar. And when I started thinking about it, I loved, the sort of spin-off series, certainly Pretty Sammy and Magical Project S and all that stuff, but the Tenchi Muyo Galaxy Police GXP was really good. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be something along those lines, and it is for the most part. You basically have this character named Kenshi, and they have some relation to Tenchi. I think in Galaxy Police it was his cousin. In this, they're not as clear about it, but he does mention his sisters a couple of times, which are very obviously some of the cast of the normal Tenchi shows. But for all other purposes, this is an aside. It takes place on a new world. It resembles to me kind of like the mech combat. Some of it reminds me of Evangelion just a little bit, but that's more in like the style of the battles a little. Not even so much. Just I don't know. Maybe more like how the mechs look a little bit. The world really resembles something like Escaflowne a lot more, sort of a mix of fantasy with some like giant robots and technology and that kind of stuff. And the main character, he actually is quite good. I really like the character of Kenshi. I feel like one place where Tenchi Muyo does drop the ball is really capitalizing on the like the martial arts aspect of the series, and just Tenchi having some personal power, because I think they tend to focus more on him, like just sort of being somebody that other people want to support, and sort of having people around him that love him, and so that he kind of has that strong support from them, and then that gives him strength, in a lot of the series. And in this one, you really have this Kenshi character. He is the one who is strong, is talented, is special. And that's interesting. That's an interesting departure, but I think kind of welcome. It's something I've wanted to see the series do. And there's some good comedy to it too. In fact, some of it is it's odd, and the series is odd. So I would say my impressions as I was starting the series, I was really on board with it, and I was coming into it with an open mind because I wanted to see, what is this all about? And the first few episodes are quite good, and then you get into this bit where like the comedy, like it's funny, but it gets sort of overtly sexual, like at a certain point, and to the extent where I was kind of like taken aback a little bit, And I mean, it's obviously like it's within the limits of good taste, It's not anything like that, but it's just more like the series had this certain tone, and then it was like, okay, and now is like boob time, I mean, I don't even remember. I don't think they showed any boobs, but it was weird. It felt odd, and it made me think about something that I read on, it was a forum or a site recently. I don't remember where it was or who said it, but they were basically like, animation now is different. I think they were comparing it to seeing some older stuff, and they were like, some of the older animation, like there was just more animation to it. There was more movement. It seems like now you pretty much have them sort of saving their budget on, flashy animation for like action scenes, and then you have the other stuff where it's like they try to move as little as possible. You sort of pan, and one character lip flaps, the other character lip flaps, and I don't know. I mean, people complain about anime being like moified or something, and I am normally like, I mean, there are a lot of series that people like complain about being like that, where I really like slice of life comedies. I really like, sort of just cute girl characters doing cute things kind of stories, K-On! Came along, and I thought it was hysterical. I mean, I've seen, just like H Channel and just like a whole bunch of stuff like that, those are fine with me. So I thought that people were complaining about those. And maybe they are, but I feel like you can complain about Tenchi Muyo War on Geminar, like in a valid way about that. So maybe they were more complaining about stuff like this, and I just haven't seen things like this. But the characters are super like tropey, and it feels hypocritical coming from me, because I've explicitly said like that's okay for me in a lot of stuff, video games and anime and stuff like that. To a certain extent, that's fine, but these characters just, they feel really flimsy. Um, there's like the cute girl who's like kind of like looks underaged, but is has more like status and authority, for how she looks. You've got that you have that contrast between sort of her looks and how she actually is. You've got, but I mean, there's a huge cast of characters. There's a whole bunch of them, and honestly, the fact that I'm struggling to remember them, I think, is significant because they're not very memorable. There's the girl that's like good at building stuff. I'm thinking kind of like Washu. She's sort of like the mad scientist inventor character, but like, I don't know, that's it. Like they don't have a lot of personality, and you can narrow the tenchi, the normal cast, down to kind of like one-line descriptions too. I mean, how sophisticated is Mihoshi? She's like the blonde bimbo. I mean, that's literally her character. Ryoko is the like the delinquent girl. She's like the female gang member kind of character. And you can distill them down into this simple like archetype, but they're interesting. Like the relationships, the way they interact between each other is interesting. The characters in War on Geminar, they're not interesting. I don't know, like all they really do is like fawn over the main character. So I started to sense a problem, once I got maybe 4 or 5 episodes into it, when I'm like, okay, the humor's like just getting kind of juvenile and weird. The characters aren't good, and also like I was really looking forward to them bringing the action in this and having like kind of a good mix between the comedy and the action, and it felt like they were sort of building up to that, and then they stalled, So I'm like, okay, so it became really clear to me that they were building up and up to, I mean, it's called War on Geminar, so I'm like, okay, there's going to be this big thing. And so, they also have this whole, like, political intrigue thing. So they spend a lot of time, like, going on with these characters about, these people's ambition, and they're going to start a coup, and all of this stuff happening behind the scenes. And a lot of these characters are sort of noblemen, like heads of state for their different countries and things like that. So you get like some of that stuff, and of course, like the main character Kenshi's just this weird guy from another world, and that kind of, I guess, brings the audience into this. But they do all of this political intriguing stuff, which has never been a part of a Tenchi Muyo series before. And that's not to say like it couldn't have been done well, but it just wasn't interesting to me. So ultimately, I finished the Blu-ray set that I had, and I was like, well, I don't think I want to buy the next one. I ended up watching the rest of the series on YouTube, which Funimation has put up there. So I would recommend, before you guys go out and buy this, that you do that. Go ahead and check out YouTube, see if this is something that you're interested in. I didn't, need to own this enough that I went ahead and got rid of my set as soon as I finished watching the series. I actually just sent it back to Amazon. They'll give you like half back for a DVD set that you buy. So that was Tenchi Muyo War on Geminar. I don't want to say that it was like an awful series, but as far as a Tenchi series go, it was a big disappointment. And as far as just a series in general goes, it was at best, all right. Next, I watched Bubblegum Crash. This is another classic, and it's sort of like the second generation of a classic. Bubblegum Crisis was the original OAV series, which is very Blade Runner inspired, very sort of RoboCop inspired cyberpunk series about this group of 4 women who basically work as vigilantes. You're in a society where these androids are used, commonly. People buy them for, just companions. They work in restaurants. They work in construction. They just do a lot of stuff that people need for labor. And they're they're maybe not highly sophisticated. They keep making the boomers better and better in this series, so it's always the thing where they're not quite human, but they have a very Terminator sort of feeling to them too. A lot of influences of I think Hollywood movies in that vein. Then, but anyway, so this group of four women, they're sponsored by one of the women is just very powerful, very rich, and very much involved in the kind of like research that led to the development of the boomers. And she's developed these suits, these hard suits. They're it's like a mech suit, but they basically are sort of like an armor that they wear, and they'll fight against boomers if things are happening kind of like outside of the jurisdiction of the AD police, which are the police force that specifically addresses boomer crimes. The Night Sabers, as they're called. This group of girls will fight sort of outside of the law when that's necessary. So that long explanation for Bubblegum Crash is basically the follow-up series to Bubblegum Crisis, and back in the day, one of my friends was like, basically, you don't need to bother with Crash. It's not as good as Bubblegum Crisis, and Bubblegum Crisis is kind of the best. So that's what I've taken with me until now. But I realized, I really should see it, and I watched it again, and it's good. I liked it quite a lot. It's funny how I think hindsight can take you out of that moment, because I think in any moment you're comparing the things that you're experiencing to kind of the best of breed things that you've been exposed to so far. So it's very easy to say, oh well, this game seemed like it might be kind of good, but it was so not good in comparison to this other game that I just played, where 20 years later you might look back and see that game in a different light because you aren't comparing it directly to what your expectations have been set at recently, and that's what happened with Bubblegum Crash. Honestly, I really enjoyed getting to see more Bubblegum Crisis stuff. Focusing a little bit more on the characters. I think with just the Night Sabers haven't been really active recently. There's some stuff where Nene is like afraid they're gonna be disbanded, and you kind of get to follow up on what the characters are doing. They're sort of moving on with their lives a little bit, but you still get these three vignettes. There are sort of individual self-contained stories of the Night Sabers having to step in and deal with some kind of situation that's going out of hand. And none of these are going to change your life. These aren't Ghost in the Shell or anything like that. But they're actually really good. As far as Bubblegum Crisis stuff goes, I think it rates right up there with the AD Police OAVs and the original Bubblegum Crisis OAVs, especially in comparison to some of the other stuff that's been done in the universe that I think didn't translate well into the 90s when they redid or followed up on 80s series. Bubblegum Crash is actually is very good.